where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
I want you to imagine that you're visiting a town in some town in Europe, and you're awestruck by just by the beautiful scenery of this town, and just the amount of nature that it really has. But you look up and you notice that the what you thought were clouds was actually smoke, and you follow and find the source of this smoke, and you find a towering factory that is perched next to the river, taking water from the river. This idea of a renaissance, the prevailing competition is capitalism and socialism, and I'm convinced that neither one of these are the answer in terms of how we get a civilization that stands the test of time. So this idea of freedom, I think it's really important, but we really should understand that it's being encroached upon in a lot of various ways, and by corporations who value profit over the natural world and our lives in general. Now, this is this idea of really the encroachment itself. It's really it seems like it's taking form and taking shape by outside entities somehow controlling regulations, and this becomes very powerful. Now, the book we'll be referencing is Silent Coup by Matt Kennard. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But the idea is the power and exposing the power of corporations abroad. And a lot of us, we don't know exactly what's taking shape and taking form outside of this idea of really colonialism, right? So like the idea first was Britain's capturing territories, and those territories have to serve the nation of Britain. And today it's like it's not the nation of Britain that these corporations are necessarily, or that these that these other these poor nations are beholden to. It's corporations, right? And this idea of colonization, it was attractive. It was so attractive that it took form and took shape in a way that wasn't what we understand as colonialism today, or colonialization today. And this guy Matt, the author of Silent Coup, he's a part of a team of investigators, and this guy is the head is this guy named Gavin, and he's like he strikes me as kind of a, an eccentric figure in terms of the idea of really what he stands for, and he seems very legitimate in terms of really 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 making real change, and hoping and initiating investigators to do just that. I want to say that this, I seen an interview with Matt, and one thing that struck me was this guy. He said to Matt, when he was looking for the next thing to investigate before he really started uncovering things in this book, he says to Matt, he says, "What do you think the most important thing is to investigate today?" And he sent Matt on this journey, and I can't recommend this book enough, but the idea of really, it's enlightening and scary, it's because it's just understanding how far things have gotten off the rails, how far things have gone off the rails. And a lot of people seem to think that, colonization was kind of the big bad boogeyman. And really, when it comes down to the effects and, the effects of colonization, we have to understand much more, or we have to understand that this idea of, nations being able to hold other nations under their grip, it's not something that is that we can say and use a term like colonization for, especially when these corporations get involved and what really takes hold and takes place. And one of the first stories, you hear about how companies threatened and sued activists, and this idea of why they did so. The idea was these people were essentially bringing attention to what was going on. And I think of course they're finding legal, ways to put legal backing behind destroying people who dare to snitch, but in a lot of ways they're straight up criminals, and just straight up gangsters in terms of the way they operate. And that is not an understatement by any means. And when it comes down to it, there was a situation where nuns were violated and killed, and this was rumored to be to really be an affiliation with what their church was doing to really highlight and help the people around them. Another situation was where I think it was one of the banana companies where this guy, or this person, I want to say this woman, remembers being a young child and getting in a car with her parents, or with her, it could have been her parents or it could have been just her dad, But the idea was her dad owned a farm, and the idea was they were going to negotiate and try to find a way to essentially get this farm into essentially producing this cash crop of bananas. They at some point they're taking a cab ride, and this guy gets out the car and someone else gets in the car. The guy who was supposedly negotiating this deal, he gets out the car, someone gets in the car, and they just kill the guy. They literally shoot the guy. And they let the girl live, but I mean that's it's pretty, I mean, it's pretty heinous in terms of what a lot of these guys are able to get away with abroad. And we talked a little bit about like this kind of, or I'm not. I want to say I've noticed, right, this shift, right, from really when it comes down to power, right. Sometimes it's better to go under really governmental organizations, and sometimes it's better for corporations. And this right here abroad, corporations, if you really want to look at what's going on abroad and what they're able to do, or what's going, like, in terms of the havoc being done abroad, we have to look at and really analyze corporations and what they're able to do, because I mean, they are running amok abroad, it appears. And these people and these corporations and these companies, they're able to take entire countries to court, right? And they're, when they own something in the country and their profits are being threatened, it becomes a legal matter. And believe it or not, these people are literally taking these poor countries to court and finding ways to essentially knowing just basically try to run the funds up to where a lot of these poor nations, they're not going to be able to pay because of kind of the structure of society right now. And they are going completely, like, it's insane. It's insanity, because these guys are like they're taking people to court, and they're taking people out of their country back to Europe or back to the United States for court. And they're going, like, it's not easy for these countries, and a lot of them, you won't even, like, it can be public funding that really is supposedly fighting a battle, and a lot of these corporations, they don't even tell, or they don't even disclose, like, they don't even disclose the court case and the results of the court case, even though the public is funding the court case. They will not disclose that, and it's insanity. It's literal insanity. But I mean, in terms of the appeal, I mean, it's there. It's really there, and when it comes down to loopholes existing for these guys to do these things, it's definitely there. And like, you even got situations where governments could come out and to their citizens, they would claim a victory while the corporations were still happy with the result, right? Like, it's I mean, it's crazy, but I'm like, I mean, I'm just thinking about like this is 2024 now with like Joe Biden saying we beat Big Pharma, and like he's saying that, and like he's really like he's trying to like instill this sense of beating corrupt organizations, and like as the president, as literally as the president, he's going up and he's like pretending to be this insider or this this outsider, and he's like it's ridiculous. It's like like I heard, what do we want? Incremental change. When do we want it? Whenever you get time. Like it's in terms of where we're at now versus where we're going. This is pure. This is where things are heading, right? And we'll get into private military a little bit later in terms of he starts to touch on private military a little bit, but we'll get more in depth later on in terms of with other presentations and other books. But this idea of really this idea was it was backed, and it was backed a long time ago, right? And it was backed under this idea of these companies were saviors of capitalism abroad. And that is there was like literally a meeting of the heads of corporations. I want to say Time in Time magazine, and it was they were so literally like the saying quiet part out loud, like imagining Time magazine posting like pictures of like the World Economic Forum, like it's insanity, but they were doing it, like, and they were they were hosting like meetings calling themselves the saviors of capitalism abroad. And it's like in terms of the roots here and the incentive, like these guys are like they're going for like really they're able to attract the people who are really aiming to be intellectuals in the society, and attract them with wealth like no other person. And they're exposing loopholes, and that in combination with the idea of simply being able to be criminal, or to act in a criminal capacity abroad is, I think that is people don't quite realize the grip that these guys have, but it is the grip that that these guys could get. I won't say they have the grip that they could get, and we need to understand that society, the way it exists now, could get a lot worse, right? Now, this idea of really, the introduction story, what happened. We need to understand that this isn't. They're encroaching on countries that are considered Western countries, and this is in Europe, but also in the U.S. as well. And these guys aren't slowing down, right? There's companies that there's companies or organizations, areas that are getting really involved with the privatization of public utilities, and they don't have good effects, especially when it comes down to costing the people who, when it comes down to costing profit, people need to understand, when it comes down to weighing the options, when things go wrong, that's when you see the effects of privatization become very much negative, because people, when it comes down to having to equate people to profit in some way, shape, or form, that's when you start to realize that these companies really will turn you into a number. And if it costs less to, say for instance, keep the case quiet in whatever capacity, they'd rather do that, in a lot of situations, when it comes down to costing any amount of, or this amount of, or more amount of profit. It's very, very much this isn't necessarily like privatization right now. I think, like, for instance, is being painted as, oh, they're going to be more efficient than the government, and that's that. When you look around and you see, like, road work being done on the road, one person digging a hole and 4 people waiting on the sidelines, absolutely, there's a chance for efficiency there. When it comes down to water, when it comes down to, like, utilities, you will not, it's not the same. It's simply not the same. And when it comes down to, this idea of, just to give you an idea, there's a situation happening in a country abroad. I want to say not Thailand. It could be Thailand, but it's somewhere in the east. And this guy, Matt, starts investigating. He's investigating essentially, like, developments, right? Like physical developments abroad. Special economic zones is what they're called. And this one zone is literally advertising cleaner air. Like, air is cleaner here. And if the residents have enough money, then they can get a piece of that air. Like, it is just thinking about that is insane. Insane, but it's happening. And not only is it happening, I mean, these guys are like, there's a heavy population it's growing in popularity. I wrote down disgusting in my notes, as I'm going through this book, as I'm going through books, and, like, I'll write notes down. And this is directly due to, there was an organization, or there was a meeting where corporations were brought in, and they were really being sold the idea of making profit off of natural disasters, or countries that are kind of facing natural disasters, and how they could make money. And it is, I mean, you get these people and you get them in the room, and things look real nice and quiet, or real nice, and including, they wear these fancy suits, and they do the most monstrous things imagine, or they're talking about the most monstrous things. And this is really, really what we're looking at here. And it really like that makes me literally, like, when it comes down to like making like me want to like literally spit in disgust. That's kind of what I think about. And this is I think this is where we're going right now. There's also kind of a story. Shout out Jimmy Dore, and but there's I forget the Twitter handle on it, but there's a story where this guy is, he's talking about his experience in delivering goods to this area that's in disaster, and there is a situation where I want to say it's the Red Cross or some kind of national organization says, hey, wait over here. Or wait here, and the guy at some point realizes, hey, nobody's going to really let us through, and he sneaks through anyway. And he delivers supplies, and he finds out that the people there kind of like, they're upset because they don't think that they're like they feel like their country's really forgotten about them, and it's kind of like it's really dark. But not only that, they find out that the national organization that acts in the wait, they asked them to wait, and they weren't doing anything. Come to find out, there was they asked them to wait because they wanted the preferred donors to be able to supply goods, and that right there was like that's a situation to where you just realize you don't quite hate your government enough. And it's very, very much it's dark. It's very dark, but I mean, it's honestly, I feel like it's when people kind of come to the realization it could be too late. In some cases, like, these companies will set up like a literal court system to deal with things. I believe there's like a like, you can't help but laugh because it's just like, well, like the concept of whistleblowing on a corporation kind of becomes like null when you're going into their courtroom. Like it's honestly like it's a clown show, because it's just like, well, what do you think is gonna, like, what justice is really gonna be served here for you to set up a courtroom is amazing. But they've done this, and it's pretty crazy. But it's kind of the name of the game, like they can parade, like, imagining that this is being really presented as a sense of justice is it's a clown. It's literally a clown show. But I imagine it gets them far enough to where they can justify the profit or justify the amount of spending in this particular endeavor of creating a court system. But it's there's a very much it's this particular company is out of like I want to say it's a company, I want to say in one of the countries in Africa, but it could be in multiple countries in Africa. Definitely, like, if there was a place to really explore this idea, that's one. They're working on things that essentially, like, how to control resources. And of course you hear about things like the river, and in terms of having a factory on that river, the locals, you can imagine, didn't agree with that factory, but they were able to get that there. And I want to say it is that particular situation, and I think it was Switzerland, where they were raising the temperature of the water to where it was becoming a problem for wildlife. And this was something that they tried to essentially hold this corporation to their local standards, and they couldn't. There was some kind of middle ground that they had to reach with this corporation, and it's something. But the idea of these guys and what they're able to do to to get profit and to really pursue profit, it's definitely it's out of the hands of the locals in a lot of these cases. And it's countries that are kind of Western in terms of the Switzerland, things of that nature. It's kind of more of an understand. It's kind of just to bring more of an understanding, because third world countries, this is life for a lot of them, but the idea of this idea of coming to Western countries, this is something that we really have to look at and face, quite literally look at and face as a direct threat and a direct problem. And there's a case where there's a diamond mine somewhere, and I forget, I think it's Tanzania, I want to say, but there's a diamond mine, and they go and they interview the managers at this diamond mine, and they really find managers who are local, but they're avid defenders of their company. And get this, outside that company, in that immediate area, you're looking at a very really destitute place when it comes down to the schools, they're basically dirt floor schools. And it could be, the teachers are essentially very much sparse, right? And this guy, or these people, have essentially this manager, and they're telling them like, oh yeah, this company really does good. And it's just like we're talking, just imagine this guy is like, I remember the manager was just like so into this idea of, our company is really doing good. And everywhere around that place is just you just look at kind of the wealth generated by this plant, and then you look at the surrounding communities. It's very clear in terms of what's going on, and this they literally have essentially indoctrinated this manager to be this avid defender. And it's very much it's a dark situation, but it becomes that much darker when you realize that a lot of these guys, they'll essentially pit the locals, or pit or they'll fix essentially like they'll make it very comfortable for one person to essentially control everybody else. this is a very popular strategy, and it's really effective. At some point, we get into this idea of investigating, and he moves into really seeing how, at some point, how aid's distributed. And a lot of us, we really don't understand where a lot of the aid ends up. We think we have some kind of semblance of an idea, but in this particular situation, like there's developments that are coming up, gated communities that are coming up, and they're coming up with essentially the aid that they get. And these communities, we're talking about fancy hotels, we're talking about fancy grocery stores that aren't less expensive than what's available now. They essentially just take away from local owners, and they're just it's crazy, but like going through and really trying to figure out what's where things are going. It was a situation to where the money that is supposedly being given to help communities is going to essentially create inequality in these areas. And it is it's a situation where the idea of foreign aid essentially needs to be torn apart and investigated to a very extreme degree. This idea of fancy hotels and gated communities is one thing, and it's very dark. But at some point we talk about a story of really how there's some soap makers in Europe, and they purchase like huge swaths of land, and they're soap makers. I think early 20th century soap makers out of Belgium, but they purchased like huge swaths of land, and it's the idea of these guys holding land and what they do with that land, what's done with that land, the idea of like ownership, it is crazy. But the people that live in that land, essentially them being able to purchase that land, they've become kings over this area. And it's crazy to think, but this is kind of an idea, or this is being propagated by the system of corporations having power, and essentially like the idea of the power vacuum left from capitalism, from colonialization. It's being filled, and it's not necessarily. And a lot of times, we're not seeing this power vacuum filled by better actors. Many times they could easily be worse. Now, this idea of really this chain of groceries, I believe this is in this chain of groceries that somehow our aid ends up funding. They're finding ways to be anti-union and essentially violate workers' rights in a number of ways, right? like this is, and they're getting away with it right now, and it's disgusting, but they're able to do it. They're able to essentially like I said, when it comes down to this concept of being able to be monsters abroad, they have enough space and an opportunity, and they're taking it. They're working on this idea of private healthcare systems, and essentially just making it to where, it's kind of like, they had some guy explain it to them, like, it's kind of like if you want like a I forgot what he said, I think a better quality something, I forget what he equated it to, but he was asked about like people who couldn't afford the healthcare, and the guy who's explaining whatever, this this gibberish to, he's trying to explain this idea, this nonsense, but he's caught with this idea, and it's like a blank stare hits his face. You know what I'm saying? Like a blank, like, or he's like, oh my goodness, like, what do you mean? Like, it's just like, like there's actually poor people that like we want to talk about them. It's like it's crazy, but it's, these guys are caught so off guard with that question. But the idea of private healthcare system, I think, is trying to really get ahead of the curve, right? Like ahead of this idea of modernization, right? Modernization means private, healthcare systems, and I mean it's literally the most ridiculous thing, when you think about the idea of, this pill costs like $1 to make, but we're gonna charge like $20 per pill, and it's not going to scientists. It's not the profit isn't going to scientists. This isn't going to doctors. It's going to the people who have the money to to essentially try to get preferable situations. And private healthcare systems in general being on the forefront makes so much sense in terms of what's going on, but it's definitely something to worry about even more. Now this idea of really special economic zones, they violate workers' rights on a regular basis, or they violate they can get away with violating workers' rights. In terms of standard practice, I can make the assumption that it can be, probably a regular thing for these guys to violate workers' rights. A lot of these guys don't even know that workers' rights exist, like is that really a thing? Like, can we get that? It's really it's sickening, but it is how a lot of these guys are operating right now. And they and the idea that, or the advertisement that a lot of them have is, hey, we bring companies and business into this area, and it's, if from a capitalist point of view, it becomes appealing, and but it's not necessarily appealing to everybody involved. It's appealing to essentially the people who basically really come out on top in the system. And it's sad, but it's really how a lot of things are done. Building this, right? So they start off, essentially, it seems like they tend to start off on the wrong foot. And the idea is, the people who own that land first don't necessarily get compensation. And it's essentially I mean, when a country decides to do a special economic zone, this idea of capitalism, bringing in the companies, this doesn't spread to. It's funny because it's just like it's very much the people can sacrifice for this idea, and it does not benefit. It looks to really drain a lot of the public. Of course, when it comes down to the idea of them providing cheap labor for a lot of these people, but also the element of essentially having to move aside for these people. Now, at some point, this guy gets into, he touches on private military practices, and one thing that really stuck out to me was how this idea of what's going on in the Middle East currently, it's like it's the end of November, and there's a tremendous conflict right now between Israel and over Israel and over Palestine, and in this particular book, written before this conflict, it talks about how Israel is essentially sold weapons to practice on Palestine. And that is it's crazy, but it's essentially how a lot of these weapons get credibility, it seems like, in terms of the new technologies and things of that nature. Credibility that equates essentially to, more better reviews on this product can essentially lead to higher prices, and this is how things are essentially done in this community. And this is, of course, this idea of I believe it's the IRF, or I forget exactly the name, or the IDF. They actually have a private military that's pretty much indistinguished. You can't really distinguish between the private military and the national military. And we'll definitely be diving into the idea of private military soon, but these guys are like this idea of the boogeyman right now. It's very much corporations and corporate interest, and the idea is the loopholes that they're finding are not insignificant. We only hear so much in this bubble that we've created in America, but outside things are different. And right now, we're privatization. I think we're seeing more of that, and that's I think that becomes more of an issue in situations where when things don't operate the way they should in the best fashion, and to where things need to get fixed in any shape or form. That's when you see the real problems come out, when it costs profit in any way, shape, or form. Now, this idea of I guess private, on the subject of private military, there's a private security, there's private security that was used in like upper class neighborhoods in Europe to like police after hours or something like that. And this is this trend, when you're able to kind of see the trend of where we're going, it becomes very, very, very much, it becomes a threat and a problem when you can notice the idea of where things can easily end up. And we're taking some pretty slippery slopes when we think about private security, policing upper neighborhoods in Europe. And now, these ideas, we'll go into more detail. Situations to where, like, there's in Libya, they trained a private organization, trained a private organization they were trained by a private organization that was hired by the U.S. And also, on the subject of the special economic zones, there's a situation, or that there's a particular place in the U.S. which is Los Alamos, and they are the control that's really, really happening here is it's scary, because they're violating, and there's a situation where whistleblowers are kind of coming out and telling people how they're violating the safety standards regarding dealing with nuclear waste, and in handling nuclear products. This problem is essentially more in our face than we think it is, and it does appear like that this is something that needs to be really on the front lines, right? Like when we think about like Gavin and him really telling people, or really telling the investigators, hey, investigate what you think is most important. It becomes this right here needs to be paid attention to, because it's not something that's going to be foreign for too long. And when it becomes more domestic, in terms of when it becomes more by the time it's in your face, I think we'll have less power and less control to really do something about what goes on. Now, in good news, there is a kind of a movement going on. The movement is called remunicipalization, and the idea is taking utilities back from companies, and that seems to be a trend, and a growing trend. Also, there's apparently, like, I've learned about an international organization for whistleblowers, and that is something that essentially it seems like I'm really glad to see people on that wavelength of taking things back. And like I said, these corporations, they are able to attract a lot of people who essentially are moved by profit, and primarily profit. But we have to kind of get out of this mode in the system in order to really, really change things. It was like, I'm not gonna lie, this was really like depressing to read all this stuff. Especially when that note came up about like like where I just wrote down disgusting. I was like literally just seeing corporations come together with the idea of, oh, we can we can profit off of natural disaster, or how can we profit off of natural disasters? It was a dark situation, but I'd like to think, or I know that I really be suited to really help people in a situation of natural disasters, in particular, in terms of trying to like help people in particular in those situations. That right there, that is. It definitely hit a chord to know that, it hit a chord with me, in particular. But I mean, I essentially got away from that. I got away from that for a reason, in terms of the idea of, that industry, the building industry in general. In terms of. I think there is definitely, and I think I'm seeing this more and more, people being moved more and more, or, more and more by a sense of something outside of general capitalism and profit, and I think we can certainly change things. And it does give me hope, especially with these organizations. Remunicipalization. Damn it, I'm gonna try it. I was saying it. Remunicipalization. Remunicipalization. And the idea of really international organizations for whistleblowers. There is a tremendous wave of that is economically favorable to ignore a lot of situations and be on the opposite end of situations, but I do think that we have a general, there is real hope in terms of people trying to figure this out and seeing that there is no real good solid end for this situation that we're in, that leads to a lasting civilization for everyone, or a lasting civilization that's going to be beneficial to everyone, or the most amount of people, I'll say. And that's been, when it comes down to corporations and the Renaissance, that's it. And you can do the YouTube or the podcast stuff, like, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.